On everyone. So rumors are circulating that Keldon Johnson is being shopped around by the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, look, this is not something that is like groundbreaking, like, oh my God, I can't believe they're shopping Keldon Johnson. I mean, this is the kind of the key guy that has been linked to any type of Spurs trade for a while now. And it's primarily because Keldon Johnson's kind of the odd man out, right? Like, look, I like Keldon Johnson. Most Spurs fans, they like Keldon Johnson, right? But he's now moved to the bench role primarily. And even though, yes, you want a 16 point a game guy off the bench, right? His ability to rebound, make plays, knock down the three ball. He at times he could be a little inconsistent, right? He is a guy that is a lot of times just like that vacuum scorer, right? He's a guy that no, when he's on, he's on. When he's not, it's kind of like, which is why he's probably best in that sixth man type of role. No, he's not like this great 3-point shooter. He has had a season where he shot a hair under 40% in the 2021-2022 season on 5.3 attempts. But he's basically a 35% 3-point shooter, which isn't great, especially when he's taken anywhere from, 5 to 7 threes a game. But again, he's kind of this vacuum scorer. When he's on, he's on. But there's just not this need for Keldon Johnson, right? Keldon Johnson, he's still young. He has values, 24 years old. He's 6'5". Again, I do think on the right team, in the right situation, I do think that, a team may value him and look at him as like, hey, he's already a guy that is established and can go get you a bucket. Right? Maybe we can kind of continue to grow and develop him and maybe make him a real, he's a rotation player for sure, but can a team actually make him a real, like, consistent piece night in and night out? But you look at the Spurs and it's like, they just drafted Ingram, right? He's more likely than not, eventually the idea is going to move into that starting small forward role. Even if he doesn't, right? Probably at some point, hopefully, is your kind of backup small forward role. There you got Stephon Castle, you got Devin Vassell, right? Like right now, this year in particular, you got Chris Paul. But I imagine if the Chris Paul thing works out, they're probably going to keep him another year or so. So, again, you just kind of go down the list of Spurs and the players, and it's just like, where does Keldon Johnson really fit in? And, is it worth kind of letting him take the shots and do the things that he does on a nightly basis when you're probably better off kind of letting Castle just get the attempts, right? I mean, look, Keldon Johnson averages, we'll use last year, for example, averaged basically 13 attempts per game. For his career, he's 13 field goal attempts per game. In 2022-2023, he averaged 17.7 attempts, but that was also his best year. He averaged 22 points. But so he's a guy that, again, we know he can score. We know he can put the ball in the bucket. But the 15 attempts a game, or 12 attempts a game, or however many he gets next season, you're almost better off putting that towards, Stephon Castle and some of the other guys, right? The guys that you're trying to grow. And now you have Harrison Barnes, right? That's another big thing. So he's going to get shot attempts. So again, it begs the question of, like, where does Keldon Johnson really fit in? I'm not saying if they don't trade him, they can't work it out and get him a spot in the rotation, or he's going to fall out of the rotation or anything. But if you can flip him into another piece that you really need, why wouldn't you do it? And personally, I think they should go look to try to get a center put alongside Victor Wembanyama, right? Like, Victor, obviously, he's long, lengthy, capable of playing the 5. But I think, do you really want him to have the wear and tear? Now, the beauty of Victor is, like, he can play the 4 or he can play the 5. And you don't necessarily, like, have to label him as either, right? Like, you can get a center, slide him over to the 4. And he can still play 5 at times. Or, you can get a power forward and just keep him at the 5. I actually like the idea of going big, especially you look at teams, particularly in the West. A lot of them have bigger body centers, right? And so do you want a guy in a Victor Wembanyama just taking that wear and tear game in and game out from, like a Jokic, or, even like a Zach Edey now in the league with, like, Memphis. And I look at it and go, man, if you can get the right center to pair with him, somebody like a Walker Kessler who can make plays, keep the ball moving, has shown the ability to knock down the occasional three, right? Definitely needs some work, but he's also incredibly young, fits the timeline of this young roster and core. He's a guy that dumped the ball down to, he could go to work, excellent rim protector, right? He's a guy that him and Victor, I think, would be just good luck trying to score around the rim, right? Like with those two. I like the idea of going after a, kind of versatile center and then having, a Victor play the 4 spot, right? I saw a interesting stat that was like Bronny James and Victor Wembanyama are like the same weight, right? Like, and look, Victor, he's going to put on weight. He's going to put on muscle. He's going to get there at some point. But, I like the idea of, kind of like the Lakers when they won the championship with Anthony Davis, right? They had the center, but when the game mattered and it was time to close, you shifted AD to the 5, right? Like something like that. Like that's just the example that kind of comes to mind that makes sense, right? Like it was like, hey, we're best with AD. Like we have centers, we're good, and obviously the centers weren't as good. JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard weren't as good as like a Walker Kessler, or as I should say, as versatile as like a Walker Kessler. So maybe don't do that, but that may be the best option, right? At points where hey, we got this center. He's coming in, he's playing, whatever, he's starting and playing his 35 minutes, whatever. But at any point, we can just shift Victor to the 5 and close the game. Right? Like that, those kind of things that just kind of try to keep in mind. But, I also look, again, you just look at how this roster is shaped up. And I've talked about this in videos. I even made a entire video breaking this down. Right? There is this sense of Victor is so cheap. Like, do you kind of take advantage of that? And him being so good so quickly, right? Like, if he was still a little kind of like, he's maybe like a top 30 player or something like that, then, let's give it a little time. But no, I mean, there's a genuine argument that he was a top 15 player last year. And he's only going to get better. Right? In the next year or two, he might be the best player in the league on both sides of the basketball. And it's like, why not take advantage of him being so cheap right now, especially with the new CBA and all the restrictions and stuff? If you can squeeze in a championship or two between now and then and the time he's about to get paid, why wouldn't you? And then not only that, but like, even if it comes to where he has to get paid and now you have to start making some decisions, like that's not a bad position to be in. And now you're just kind of tweaking and, okay, like this guy, he's kind of the odd man out and he's making X amount of money, right? And you kind of make that move. But to me, it's just like there is this sense. So if you can, I'm not saying you trade Keldon Johnson just for fun, right? I don't think you trade Keldon Johnson just to say you made a trade. But if the right deal is there, and I don't personally think that that's like Lauri Markkanen, right? I know Lauri Markkanen's been linked to the Spurs a lot. I don't hate the idea of Lauri Markkanen. I just think his price and is he really like your second best player, which is what you're going to be paying him to do? It's not really my favorite, but again, like I'm not saying that they have to make this big trade right now. You can be patient. Maybe it comes at the trade deadline. Maybe it comes next offseason. But like in the next like 2 years or so, like within, now and 2 years from now, it would be nice to see the Spurs kind of make a big splash. And I know that they have a bunch of assets and they have a bunch of picks and they have all this stuff that people don't want to see them part with. But at some point, you're going to have to make some tough decisions, right? At some point, you can't have 15 rookies on the roster, right? Like every year you're bringing in 3 or 4, and we just saw them trade the number 8 pick for that reason and kind of push it down the road, kick the can down the road a little bit, right? And here's the thing. Would you rather have the tough decision now before you don't know what you get? Or would you rather have the tough decision when you have 7 guys that you really like and you're like, man, I don't really want to trade any of these guys? Because now at any point you can make an argument it's a bad decision. Where if it's like you traded the pick already, it's like, you know, who knows what that becomes, right? Like, so there is that argument in that sense. And then also you're going to have to pay people. Like, even if you do, like, let's say you keep all your picks the next, like, 3 years, right? And you get a bunch of rookies and stuff. You bring all these guys in, right? Eventually, guys are going to have to be paid. All those guys that turn out to be good are going to have to be paid. And then all of the ones that don't turn out to be good, it's kind of like, man, you really should have used those picks to go get a guy that is good, right? So again, if the right guy is on the table or you can find the right move, I think that the Spurs should look to trade Keldon Johnson. Again, just because they're potentially shopping him doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be traded, right? I mean, you always want to do your due diligence. Outside of Victor Wembanyama, nobody on this roster is untouchable, right? Like, Victor Wembanyama is just so good and so young, right? There's only like a handful of players in the league that are truly untouchable, right? Now, there's guys you don't really want to part with, right? Like, if you're the Spurs, you don't want to part with Castle. You don't want to part with Vassell, right? Like, you don't want to part with those guys. But if Jokic becomes available and somebody's like, hey, give us Castle and Vassell plus, Keldon Johnson, like, basically match salary with that, you're not doing that? Like, again, if the right move is there, no one is untouchable. So you always want to listen to the deals, right? And 90% of the time, if not more, nothing develops, nothing happens. It's just kind of like, good talk, good luck to you type thing. Where, but on occasion, you get that random trade out of left field where everyone's like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And it's like, oh, wow, look at what happened. Like, look at what they got in return and look what they got. So Spurs are luckily in a position where they can be patient, right? They're in a position where there's not this, there doesn't need to be a rush. Obviously, again, it would be nice to kind of expedite things because Victor's so good, but it's not something that you have to do, right? It's not like something where, like, man, if, like Giannis asking out, right? Like, if the Bucks don't do something and then they go and get Damian Lillard, right? It's not something like that where you're worried about, like, man, if we don't do something in the next year or two, Victor's gone. Like, no, he's just gonna be around for at least another 6+ years minimum. So you have time. And I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not saying that he's leaving after 6+ years. I'm just saying, like, if he ever were to, because let's say the Spurs aren't doing anything, you're not on this crazy time crunch. But, if the right move is there, I think you do it. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of shopping Keldon Johnson? Do you think, no, like, you need to keep Keldon Johnson? I feel whatever your thoughts are. I love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.